Hello, welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino Varelli, founder and CEO of Project Purple. We have an exciting interview coming up with two very special guests after a few quick updates. Since 2010, we've contributed over $3 million and counting to pancreatic cancer research efforts. We've also allocated $1 million worth of aid to more than 1,300 patients and families through our patient aid programs. Your monthly or one-time gift can improve patients' lives through research and assistance programs. You can donate now at projectpurple.org. Pancreatic cancer does not rest, and neither will we. Your support is truly appreciated. If you're looking to get involved in one of our events, whether that means joining a run team, participating in a virtual run walk, group fitness, golf, or anything else you can think of, visit projectpurple.org/events for more details. I'm excited to introduce two of our special guests here today, coming to us all the way from Tracy, California, Northern California, I should say, right outside of the San Jose area. Lora and Chris Jenkins, welcome to the Project Purple podcast.
Hi there.
Hello. So I know we were playing kind of get to know each other. This is the first time we've met. I know you've been talking to our staff here at Project Purple. We're going to get into Lora's journey here, but I know there's a recent celebration, as you just said, Lora, just having a big milestone birthday here just past couple of weeks. And so thank you guys for joining us here. I'm looking forward to hearing your story as we did just catch up quickly here, but there's so many, I use a lot of terms here on the podcast, and I think one of them like really cool that I like to use is like these golden nuggets, and you were able to share just one of those golden nuggets of having that milestone birthday celebration, which is really special. So I'm sure we'll get into that at some point here on the podcast. With this, I'm going to turn this over to Lora and Chris to kind of share their journey with pancreatic cancer and how they got here to the podcast today. With that, the microphone is yours.
All right. So the journey began in October of 2022. I actually wasn't feeling sick at all. I was very active. We ran, we walked. I walked to probably at least 3 to 4 miles a day. On the weekends, we were doing like 10 to 12 miles a day. I was very active. It was kind of an odd way of finding out. It was the end of October, and all day long throughout the house, I just kept having this feeling like almost like a song that's in your head that you just can't get rid of, and you're humming it all day long. And it was a voice telling me, go to emergency, Lora. I had that feeling over and over all day long. I've never experienced anything like that before. And my husband got home from work, and we're watching TV that night. And I just kind of told him, I said, we got to talk. I said, I think I need to go to emergency. And we were both baffled by this because I felt great. I was having him look at my, at my body and in my abdomen. And I was like, does it look swollen? Can you see anything? And I just had a feeling it was my stomach. But again, I wasn't having any problems, any nausea, anything. We decided that I would go to emergency the following morning. Went there first thing in the morning, like 6:30 in the morning. And I did tell them that I wasn't in any pain. I wasn't, I had a feeling that I needed to be there. They probably thought I was kind of crazy, and I just knew I had to be there. And, I kind of joked and told them, you'll know that I'm not on drugs once you get my blood work up. And, I teased and said, I might be a little crazy. I'm a mom of 3. I mean, I think we all are a little crazy after a mom of 3. And so they did get me in, and they did my blood work up, and they didn't tell me anything that was going on yet with my blood. And then they had me do an ultrasound and then a CT scan. So then at the end, after several hours of being at emergency, I was told that I had a mass on my pancreas and 2 lesions on my liver. It had already metastasized, and that I had already stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So
Wow.
that's how I found out. A matter of fact, my husband came with me, and at that time, I went into emergency, and he went to Costco and did a couple errands. I mean, we weren't really concerned about, oh, Lora has something major, because I felt great. Um,
Was this like the first time that you've ever had kind of this intuition that like, hey, something wasn't right here?
it I knew I felt fine. It was just that day, all day long, I just felt like I was receiving messages, and the message was the same all throughout the day. 100% the same. Go to emergency, Lora. It just stuck in my head over and over and over again.
Chris, I know hindsight's always 2020 here, and I got a question for Chris. Since you know Laura the best here, was there anything odd with like this moment in time when Laura's like, "Hey, I need to go to the hospital. Like, something's not right, but I feel okay." And, you're kind of checking her out and trying to see if you can see anything.
That I remember thinking back on that evening when she was talking, and she's doing like planks and looking, stretching this way and that way and saying, "Look at my abdomen." And I'm like, this has got to be a woman that's just, I don't know what, right? I was just, it's just a lady thing, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, she's telling me this, so I'm going to give it some credence. And, you know, with the cool thing is the whole work from home thing, I'm actually was able to work from home a little bit. So I was like, all right, fine. You know what? Let's do that. Let's go to emergency. If you feel that strong about it and you're having these things, or this push, these voices that you're hearing, this feeling, this overwhelming feeling that you got. All right, let's do it. And I remember even at that night going, if you want to go now, we can go now.
Yeah.
But, sometimes nighttime emergency rooms are always packed.
Right.
And she was like, no, tomorrow morning will be fine. And so we left. And when she got the news, I was actually shopping at Costco, and she called me, and I was talking to a friend, and it was the worst. It was the worst phone call I've ever received, and the tone in her voice telling me to get inside the room immediately. She needed my help. It was something else. So I ran out of Costco. I mean, I dropped everything, just took off out the door, and I was like 50 minutes away. I ran like 3 red lights to get there, and I run in and then I think she must have met me like right outside the door or something. I can't remember. And I go in the room, and I'll sort of turn it back over to her. But I remember the doctor coming in crying. The lady doctor, the emergency room.
We had emergency when she was telling me that I had the mass on my pancreas, on the tail of my pancreas, and the lesions on my liver. When she comes in the room, well, I definitely knew it was bad news, because she came in teared up and all crying, telling me that I had this, the mass. And so definitely knew it was bad news.
So then where do you guys go from there? Do you guys then get referred out to oncology at one of the hospitals locally, or do you guys end up going somewhere else?
Well, I had Kaiser at that time, so I was been seen at Kaiser. So right when I was diagnosed, I guess Kaiser was in the midst of a strike. And they were having issues trying to get my appointment scheduled. And they wanted to push me out at least a month before my first appointment. And we were not having that. We found out the name of our patient advocate. And we were calling, she wasn't picking up. We would call and call and call and leave messages. We called that lady so many times, she probably just called us back just to shut us up. But we said, no, I don't want to wait a month. So persistence right there paid off. I was able to get in the following week for my biopsy. And then a week after that was able to get my first round of chemo.
So, but through Kaiser though.
Through Kaiser.
Yeah. So I know that's like, I remember we were talking a little bit about California before. Kaiser's huge in California. If you don't live in California or like the greater Virginia, DC area, people know, I think, the name Kaiser Permanente, at least like in our generation, because I think like there were commercials years ago, but like these millennials now have no idea who Kaiser Permanente is, but they're huge. I mean, I think through their network, they have something like 15 million, subscribers. So big network. And I know just from, we've talked to them in the past about some joint research, and they do a great job there in California. They have majority of their subscribers, I should say, are in California. So when you go to Kaiser now and you get this doctor, get in to see them right away, what's kind of like, what are they telling you there at that point in time? Are they saying, hey, like you got to start chemotherapy? I'm sure they did genetic testing usually in that first consult, run you through the whole thing.
Yeah. So I had the biopsy just to, of course, confirm the diagnosis. And then I also had the genetic testing. So I was positive for 2 gene mutations, the PALB2 mutation and the, MUTYH. Still don't know how to pronounce it.
Genetic testing comes back that you're positive for these gene mutations. Now, were you aware of like the genes prior to being diagnosed or no?
No, I had no idea that I had the gene mutation. The only thing that I did know for like my hereditary thing was that I knew that my biological mother, she had been gone for a long time out of the picture. I knew that she had died. I was told of multiple cancers. So I never really knew what cancer she had. I'm wondering maybe she did have pancreatic and maybe it had spread. I'm not too sure. But now I knew that I had this gene mutation, and they were saying that is the reason why I got pancreatic cancer. It was from that PALB2 mutation.
Yeah, and I think this is like an interesting piece here. I mean, in the last like 5 years, I think the one major, a little bit before COVID, but I think like post-COVID, I think like the really positive, one of the huge positives in this space has been this gene mutations and understanding gene mutations. And I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a second, just there's certain regimens, chemotherapy regimens that they will provide patients with certain gene mutations that they know do fairly well for those patients and give them high quality of life and extend, life. And then also we see a lot of disease regression and the disease, in some cases, elimination. We've had people, that we've talked to. So nothing's ever a positive. Like it's not a positive to get pancreatic cancer. But I think the big difference that we've seen is if you get pancreatic cancer and you have these specific gene mutations, that is a positive because of the treatment protocol and because of what we do know right now today in 2024 about genes and the stuff that's happening. I feel like the stuff that's really moving the fastest in the space, and we just had a very fascinating talk on a previous podcast about this, is genetics. And genetics is moving not just in pancreatic, but I think as a whole. And I think in a lot of cancers, you look at breast cancer as I think a prime example, they've done some amazing things on the genetics piece and breast cancer, lung cancer. So, hopefully pancreatic cancer can continue these advances. So when you get the genes back, which typically the genetic testing, I should say, not that you got a pair of genes, but you do have genes here. But when you get the genetic testing back, do they change the treatment protocol then at that point? Does things shift? Because I know it's usually not immediate. It usually takes like 4 to 6 weeks. So they start you on treatment and then they get these results. So how does that go?
So, so after I got the diagnosis from Kaiser, within a week of diagnosis, I just wanted to make sure that Kaiser had the correct diagnosis for me. I had already started with a second opinion with Stanford Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So you just, they get all of your records and scans, and they do an evaluation and see whether or not they agree with the diagnosis and what the treatment plan was. So Kaiser's treatment plan was just basically just start on the 12 cycles of fulfirinox.
Yep.
The wonderful chemo cocktail. And when the second opinion came back from Stanford, they had agreed that was where I should start. So when I began, so let's say now we're at November of 22, the beginning, my CA19-9 level was at 11,918.
Wow.
So then so at this point, I had already seen a couple doctors at Kaiser. So I had seen my first oncologist, and I pretty much terminated her the first day that I met her. She had no hope for me. She didn't really have any options for me. And I certainly didn't feel that she was going to be the correct person to advocate on my behalf. And so then I terminated her and then got another oncologist. And then they had me meet with the surgeon at Kaiser to go over my diagnosis, as well as the surgeon wanted to let me know that that I would never be a candidate for surgery because I was already a stage 4. And then, of course, he let me know that he thought I had anywhere from 3 to 9 months to live. And the chemo probably will not save me, but it would just, give me a little more longevity. Maybe I could get a year to a year and a half if I started the chemo. That was a very devastating day for us after leaving there. It was probably one of the worst days ever.
So I want to jump in here real quick, Lora. You said something really powerful here. You fired the first oncologist.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'll ask Chris this question. Lora's personality in that moment. So I guess my question here, and I want to phrase this correctly, was that something that you were comfortable doing?
Well, I guess the answer, yeah, 100%.
I'm an outspoken person.
Okay, all right, that's all right.
I knew, once I heard I had stage 4 cancer, of course, I didn't have any information on pancreatic cancer. I hadn't had anybody in my life that had pancreatic cancer. But what I did know is that now I'm entering into a relationship with this oncologist, and she was supposed to, for me, she was supposed to assure me. I wanted to talk about clinical trials. Was there anything else? So they basically told me, no, Lora, you have the 3 to 9 months. That surgeon even let me know that he wanted to reassure me that it would be swift. If I died, it would be swiftly. And I remember that word swiftly stuck in my head. And throughout this entire cancer journey, the word swiftly, he made a comment. He said that basically one day, I could start feeling sick, like I would get the flu, feel like I had flu type symptoms. And he told me that it would be swift. I could be gone within 3 days. We just sat there looking at each other with such astonishment. And, we couldn't be any lower to the ground at that point. I mean, just peel us up off the ground. So even, as I was getting treatment and if I got a cold or I got sick a few times, I remember staying up all night long, just thinking of the words that surgeon had said that, oh, it will be swift, Lora. And it made me nervous when I got sick. I thought, is this it? Is this what they're talking about? I mean, it was so hard to fathom.
You should have gave him a quick, swift kick in his midsection.
We left there that day after we had talked to the surgeon. Like I said, we were super low. We went in the parking lot. We probably cried for an hour, and then we had decided we were just gonna. We went to church. We left there. We went to our church, and we called them in just tears. And of course, they opened the doors and had us come in. And in all the pastors, they prayed for me and for us, and anointed me with oil, and then we just took off. We threw everything in the RV and headed out to Half Moon Bay to the ocean for a few days, just so that we could process this information. It was devastating.
But that doctor didn't have to say that. And
it was horrible.
I apologize. As an advocacy group, as a person who advocates for patients and families, for those watching and listening, the system is broken. You are a testament to that, as are many others. But as we said before, I think, before we hit record, everyone is a survivor. Everyone, whether it's day 1 or year 20 or year 30, every single person is a survivor. And when clinicians, especially doctors, say things to families and patients, that has an effect, right? Hopefully it's positive. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's negative, right? But no doctor, and this is like the most frustrating thing that I've done in 14 years is that, I get it. Doctors go to school for a long time. They do a lot of stuff to get them to a certain level, just like anyone in any profession, right? Once you get to a certain level, but that doesn't mean that we know it all. There's a thing of humility, right? And you never know, right? You never know. And I think with mortality, as we said before we hit record, we just don't know, right? No one knows that. So for clinicians, especially clinicians, to say those things to patients, is so wrong. What the hell is wrong with people in the medical field? If you're listening or watching, stop doing this. It's wrong. And I apologize that you guys had to go through that. And it just burns me that this is not about me, but my family had a very similar, and not that it was the motivation, because at that point I had started Project Purple, but a clinician said that to my mom about my dad at one point, and she had to be held back by nurses. And that was 15. That was 15. No, my mom is an immigrant. She's this little Italian lady, 5'2". You don't mess with her. She came
a little
over.
feisty.
Yeah, she's got a little heat in that oven. So yeah, but we haven't gotten any better, Laura and Chris, in 15 years. That was 15 years ago. I don't know. And I've said this, and kudos to you. That's why I kind of, asked that question. You fired the first oncologist. Hopefully you fired this guy.
Oh, I did.
But as you have to advocate for yourself. And sometimes that's innate in us, right? That's your personality before. And sometimes it takes a diagnosis of something really, really serious for people to really advocate. And sometimes people never advocate for themselves. And again, I'm not saying that every doctor is bad or this, but if you don't feel comfortable with the answers you're getting, just leave. Just leave. Go
Yeah.
somewhere else. Go find another doctor in the system in the area. There's plenty of doctors out there. There's a lot of great resources, from many groups that support patients in this journey that can help you get into another facility with a
Mhm.
world-class physician at many facilities around the country. I mean, I think like 15 years ago, there weren't, as many centers of excellence for pancreatic cancer. Now there's a lot
Mhm.
more. So I think that the competition and you're the paying customer. I just like
Exactly.
I'm rambling a little bit here because I'm so pissed off that you guys had to go through that mental gymnastics just because of words.
Well, I knew at so this is the very beginning of the cancer journey, but I already knew from the very beginning, I want to live. I'm going to surround myself with people that are going to support me and that they have a plan. They are telling me, yes, Laura, you are going to make it. Even if the doctors, maybe they had hesitation because I was stage 4. But you know what? I wanted hope. I needed that. I needed them to say, Laura, this is a bad situation, but you got this. We're going to be as aggressive as we can with you. I was really healthy at the time and strong. But yeah, so Kaiser, I did start my chemo with Kaiser. Um, I knew that I wanted to leave that being my healthcare. I was able to change insurance, and then in March of 23, I started going to Stanford Healthcare, and so I started with round 9 of chemo with Stanford Healthcare with a oncologist, Dr. Holden, who just had only positivity for me. He had already known that they had put me on palliative care right away at Kaiser. And he says, let's not even worry about that right now. You're doing good. My numbers, I was having a good response to the chemo. So then in March, when I started with Stanford, my CA19 number had gone down to like 2892 when I started this in November of 22 at 11918.
That's huge.
So then, yeah, that was a huge difference. So I was definitely getting the effects of the chemo.
So I got a question here, Laura. And Chris can add his thoughts in here too, because there's always a difference from the person watching all the time versus the person going through. You said originally like you had no signs or symptoms, like this intuition. So like your life didn't change because of signs and symptoms. Now you go into chemo, and now the chemo does have this effect, right? Like whether it's neuropathy, nausea, just being tired, dehydration, sores, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So do you start then going from like, hey, I was perfectly fine, no noticeable signs and symptoms, to now I'm sick?
Now I'm sick. Now with the chemo, the chemo was kicking my butt definitely for a while. Just the nausea, getting sick, definitely a lot of my body processing in both ends.
Yeah.
And then we were trying to find out, throughout this time I was on the chemo, but I did start on our own protocols of alternative medicine that we researched. We were researching within the first week of what else can we do on our standpoint. I'm not going to rely on just chemo at that point. What else can I do? We were giving it everything that we possibly thought would work.
So were these alternatives ways? So I guess there's a couple things here with alternatives. So I think people sometimes hear alternatives. They're like, well, that means you're not doing traditional chemotherapy, like traditional Western medicine. You're more going the route of like Eastern medicine, using herbs and stuff as like your main ingredient to battle the cancer. Or sometimes people use alternatives as a way to enhance chemotherapy and also not have as many issues, whether it's nausea, GI,
Mhm.
dehydration, because again, you can't keep anything down. You're throwing up, you're going to the bathroom, everything's just running out of you, right? So, were the alternatives kind of a combination of both to try to, do what traditional chemotherapy was doing in terms
Mhm.
of eliminating the cancer, but also enhancing, the treatment that you're currently on?
I we believed with our research that it was going to enhance my results from, besides just doing only chemo. And it was also, I didn't want to take pain meds
Yeah.
and other things that they were offering me. So I went a definitely a more natural, I guess, route.
Do you feel
He can.
comfortable mentioning some of the
Oh
things that
yeah,
you
I have
did?
no problem with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
He can talk about that.
yeah.
So, so I guess just rewinding just briefly, so that first 2 weeks after, no hope was given, right? I mean, let's just be honest. At the beginning, it was okay. Well, we're going to have to drive the bus our way too, right? Okay, they're only going to go so far. We're going to have to try to figure out something. And you start going down these rabbit holes. Obviously, I'm sure most people have been there, and you're searching stuff out on the internet, and so we start seeing things, and we definitely, I noticed there were things like on news, like on the news, but you never hear about it. But then you see it something on Facebook, or actually, I just would be like YouTube, a news blurb about someone who had cancer and they took something and it worked, right? So um, right away we the CBD
Yep.
oils, and it was pure CBD. And then we got into THCs also for pain. And we actually got linked up with a place that deals with using these two medicines for healing cancer and things for children, autisms and stuff like that, right? So they linked us in with some videos called one of them was CBD Nation. It's on Amazon. It's like $3. You could watch it. People can make up their own mind. Um, but we started down that, and then we also found something called Rick Simpson oil.
Yeah.
It's just a more pure form of THC, and we started on that, and that really helped with I want to say the anxiety and the pain mitigation. I think during the chemo stages, because that's sort of even though it was like 2.5 to 3 days worth of straight chemo, it it's the effects last 5 days, and then that you have that week of just she's trying to recover just to get to the next round, right? And then we did that, and then another one we did was fenbenzidol.
Mhm.
Sure, you've heard of that. There's a multiple groups through Joe Tippins, and another one is a fenbenzidol group on Facebook. And then we actually started. We did research, and we found a Rife machine. And a Rife machine is like a resonant frequency light,
Yeah.
and so we did that multiple times a day, for an hour and a half.
Yeah, hour and a half each session, twice a day. I started on that machine. I'm sorry, go ahead,
No,
Krista.
no, that's fine. I'm just the co-pilot here. And then we did a curcumin was another one that we did curcumin, and there's been lots of positive things with the curcumin,
In
mushrooms,
mushrooms.
satake's, turkey tails, and stuff.
So of course, with all of this being thrown at this pancreatic cancer, we'll never know what helped the most. It was everything. We just gave everything we got, and if I could tolerate it, and I would have to keep building up to be able to take all this medicine. Um, But as long as I could tolerate it, I took it. If we, after our research, and we thought, okay, this is the route that we choose for us, that this is going to work.
And you saw positive results in the sense that, as Chris mentioned, like, which I think is typically the norm, right? Like you do the chemo, you feel good the next day, and then boom, it hits you, right? And then now you're out to count. Maybe you get like one good day, like the day before you
Yeah,
go for that next session, and then like you're back in that shit zone again, right? For
yeah,
like 10
that's
days,
true.
11 days. And you get, within that 14 weeks, you get like 1.5 good days, which is, pretty common for
Yeah.
most people, I think. So when you started this, you implemented these not all at the same time, but you were implementing this since like day one of doing the treatments. So did you see progressively over time, like you were starting to get, stronger in the sense like you wouldn't have as many crappy days, let's say in a 14-day cycle, you'd
Yeah.
have more good days than bad days.
It really kind of depended, like pain wise. Um, of course, the RSO was really helping, of course.
Yeah.
Uh, it just kind of depended. I mean, some rounds were definitely a lot harder than other ones. It just really depended. But
though I appreciate the honesty because I think, I think there's so much unknown in all of cancer, right? And I think, Chris, you said something, everyone's got to kind of do their own research, right? And not everything is, hey, some people like apple pie, some people swear on rhubarb pie, right? And so I think everyone has to kind of find what fits for them. But, as we said before we hit record here, this is what this podcast has become, to share these things, and people can do their own research. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of these I've heard before. We've had people come on and talk about CBD and THC and Rick Simpson, and the Rife machine is actually kind of interesting. There's a place down in Florida called Hippocrates. It's an institute. It's run by a legit doctor. It's not voodoo or witchcraft or anything. Guy's been an MD, and it's fascinating. They do a lot with anti-aging, but clearly as cancer has grown. And if you think about anti-aging, it's kind of interesting because that's like the same, people are trying to live as long as possible. So you're trying to eliminate, cancers, heart disease, all these issues that, society has. And I remember hearing about the Rife machine that they use that for their cancer protocol down there at Hippocrates. And I think they're in like West Palm and stuff. But, so I think that all of this is amazing. And I think, people have to do their own research. We're not licensed doctors, and we're not advising that people do these things. But I think you have to, and I think this goes back to the very beginning, Lora and Chris, is like that first oncologist, like you fired them because you didn't like what they said, and you have to advocate for yourself. No facility is going to say, hey, maybe you should supplement, CBD and THC.
yeah,
Like they'll give you the card, they'll give you the script to go get a card, but they're not going to tell you what to do, right? Which is, I think, another
true.
failure of our system, right? Like it's like, here you go, here's a card, go, go do what you want. There's no like instructions, and that's part frustration, but it's also, I think, the power of like why we share these stories.
Yeah, I would say that just on the R protocol that we were doing, it definitely helped me with my anxiety. My anxiety was through the roof. I mean, you know, I was scared every day. It was tough. It was tough on the body and very tough on the mind.
So you go to Stanford.
Okay.
You're in round 9. I'm going to go back to the treatment here. Your
Okay.
CA 19.9 is low. Do you get to round 12? So like, where do we go from there?
So then, so at this point, so I'm at Stanford starting in March, and in May, the end of May, I had finished up my 12 rounds of chemo. So I had the Stanford between rounds 9 and 12. So I finished my 12th round of chemo, and my oncologist recommended a clinical trial drug for me called Rebecca. He believed that it showed promising effects on my PALB2 gene mutation. It wasn't FDA approved for pancreatic cancer. It was only approved for like ovarian and prostate cancer. So he had said, hey, that's my number one medicine. I believe this will work for you. Of course, the insurance, we had issues with insurance, talking again about advocating because the medicine was like $25,000 a month. So dealing with the insurance was, well, I guess for him, it was pretty crazy. He had a lot of phone calls and hours. We were able to get a copay card with the for the medicine, and it helped us pay because obviously we couldn't do $25,000 a month, and that was just for the Rebecca. So that wasn't anything to do with the extra medicine that I was taking, which was probably around $4,000, $3,500 a month.
Oh.
Yeah. So
the financial toxicity is insane, right? Like, I mean, I think you guys are throwing out the numbers here, but just think like there's drugs that have the ability to hopefully do what they're supposed to do in disease regression and disease, no evidence of disease potentially, right? Mm-hmm. But $25,000 a month is insane.
That's insane. It's unfortunate that is how our society is with big pharma. Of course, that's a whole other broad podcast, but it's so much. It's horrible. But anyway, so I did get on this Rebecca.
So real quick on that, going down the Rebecca and the insurance issue, when they had denied us, I had called. I have like a benefits coordinator advocate for my work that takes care of all our benefits, and she's like, well, I don't really know what, yeah, you can appeal, but because it's not FDA approved. And so then I started explaining to her exactly how our Stanford doctor, which gave us tons of hope and is a great doctor. How he explained it to us, and he because we don't know anything, right? We're just a common person. We don't understand. I mean, and then the lady literally said, if you have him write a letter, like you just said it right now, like I'm a 16-year-old young person, and have him send it back over to the insurance company, maybe the appeal will work. And our doctor was totally cool with it, wrote it up just like he had explained it to us, like the common man. And it was literally how the Rebecca and the PARP inhibitor, which a lot of people don't realize, it only attacks how in that gene mutation, her tumor was only growing in a single cell DNA, is what was explained to us. And that's all the PARP inhibitor attacked, was that single cell. Because we didn't have to worry about the double cell of the tumor growing that way. And once he wrote it all out and sent it in to the insurance company, took about a month, and we got a phone call, or she did, and it was good news,
So they took care of it. So how quickly do you start from this idea to when you get the first dose? How long did that take?
Probably a month.
Yeah, there was a gap, right? Overlap.
So then I started at the end of May, and then now the PARP inhibitor started working very aggressively with me. So by June, a month later, I was at my CA19-9 number was at 1439. A month later, it dropped to 550. And then a month later after that, I was at 261. So now we're really excited. Every time I had to get the blood work, I mean, I was on that phone 100 times waiting for my results, because now I'm seeing all these amazing results, and I'm feeling like, my goodness, there really is a good chance here. I mean,
And were you starting to feel better during that same time? Like with taking this PARP inhibitor, were you seeing like your quality of like your daily life, like increasing in terms of positive?
I think I was feeling better, but also with the PARP inhibitor, but also mentally, just
Yeah.
seeing those numbers drop. And I had like a little graph at home, and just watching it was just encouragement. And so I'm a very analytical person. I love charts and being organized like that. And then just watching it just go lower and
Yes.
lower was like, yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it. Yeah. Um, but so let's back up to March when I started with Stanford. Um, although I was happy starting with Stanford, I wanted to get another opinion because now I'm starting to see my numbers. I had a good response to the chemo. So I reached out to Mayo Clinic in
Mhm.
Minnesota.
Mhm.
So that was March of 23. At that time, they denied me, told me to stay the course with what I was doing at Stanford. Um, but then that ended up changing in September. I got a call from Stanford who had been reviewing my records on a monthly basis. And they started seeing, they were looking at my CAT scan, my tumor had been decreasing, my numbers were getting better. And now Mayo finally said, hey, would you like to have an appointment with us? Oh, and yes, I did. So Mayo in Minnesota is number one in the nation for the pancreatic care.
Yeah.
So, so that was in September, and then I was there in October.
So when you go in September, what did you do? You met with like the whole team and you talked about like potentially, were they talking about surgery to remove the tumor because everything was going in the right direction? And I assume you probably weren't at that point metastatic. So they figured surgery would be a good option.
Yes, um, it was the first time a doctor had ever even said the 4-letter word cure to
Mm.
me. He got a piece of paper out and he had did a little like a pros and con list. It was cure was the heading on one side and longevity was on the other side. And he asked me, Laura, and I'm sitting there, he says, which one do you want? Well, I'm going with the cure. And I took my finger slowly and I pointed to the cure. And he said, Laura, we think we can cure you.
It's awesome.
I mean, to hear that word, it was in disbelief, but it was just amazing to hear that word. I mean, so he had a plan for me. I had more tests to take, and he thought I was ready for surgery. When I started doing research, keep hearing things, and of course, it was the Whipple surgery for
Yeah.
stage 1, 2, 3, but I wasn't hearing much for a stage 4.
Yeah. So
So
the surgeon gives you that news, which now like think about this journey. And again, I've been taking notes here. So, we go back to, originally diagnosed, when you started in 22, in the fall 22, and that first surgeon was like, hey, like nothing you can do, 3 to 6. And now you're at Mayo, a year later, practically, right? In the fall of 23.
Yeah.
And
correct.
surgeon's like, hey, we got cure here. We're going for the cure here. Which one do you want? So
It was crazy. Yes.
talk about a roller coaster ride, to say the least, right? Like you're up one, you're down, and now you're up. So what happens then? So do you stay out in Rochester or do you go back home, do maintenance chemo, or continue the PARP and then go back out to Mayo?
So I continued the PARP inhibitor, the Rebecca, throughout this whole journey. I'm still on it today.
Yeah.
I'm not off of it yet. We're going to reevaluate in June. There's not much clinical data to support, to really understand long-term effects
Yep.
and some other issues. I feel like a little bit of the Lone Ranger right now with it. Stanford is very surprised about my progress. They basically have told me there's little to no evidence to substantiate how well I've gotten that the tumor reduced in my CA19 number. I mean, they were a little flabbergasted, as well as Mayo was very shocked about my numbers and how well I tolerated all the medicine. I always went full strength with all the FOLFIRINOX, the 12 rounds, just hit me hard and give me everything that you got was my motto. And if I could tolerate it, I did it.
So then do you have surgery then at Mayo? Were you able to have surgery at Mayo then in 23?
Yes. So October we go there. So we stayed in Mayo off and on, but more on for like 6 months. So I first had a liver ablation done the beginning of December. I had that, and then I had they put me on 15 rounds of oral chemo and 15 rounds of radiation. And then they retested me with the PET MRI, and they said, okay, we're going to do the surgery. I came home, and about 3 weeks later, we were back at Mayo. And January 30th of this year, I had the distal pancreectomy and splitectomy. They removed 12 lymph nodes, 2 of which had cancer. And they believe they were able to remove those with clear margins. Wow. So I've already had 2 tests since then, and I'm still no evidence of disease.
So how was I'm gonna ask you that. Yeah. I'm gonna ask you the question first, and then I'm gonna go to Chris. So ladies first here, Chris. So Lora, that first time, and maybe, well, when was it when you came out of surgery, or maybe it was when they come back with all the path reports where they say, hey, you have no evidence of any cancer in the pancreas and no evidence of disease. Like, what was that feeling like?
Awesome. Amazing. I felt the Lord gave me my miracle. I believe that God was with me my entire journey. So
special.
It's just,
and Chris,
it's been amazing,
to say the least. Lora, I mean, to go from stage 4 in October 22 to early 24 to have no evidence, it's special. Chris, for you, what was that like, that moment?
What it was, so the day before the surgery, we had to go back, and it was like the last day of the month in January of 24, and they ran tons of tests, and we knew, or at least I knew, and I'm sure she did too, everything had to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Nothing could have just sneaked out or it went sideways. And then when we met with our doctor,
I reached out to PanCan, and I would send messages to like other people that were commenting about pancreatic cancer, and I got to know a few people that I talk to now. Who I've developed a relationship with. Just reaching out to people. I would say before in my life, it would have been, it's just hard for me to ask for help. And it's, I'm always a little more sheltered. I'll do it myself. I'm kind of stubborn like that. But this was by far greater than anything that I could manage. So just only having people around that was positive. Lora, you're going to make it. You're going to be that one that is going to tell their story afterwards and help others. I had people always telling me that. the cancer support group ladies, everyone, Lora, you're going to be that one. And, I just kept believing it and believing it. And that feeling just got stronger and stronger. And I thought, you know what? I am going to be that one, because everything was banking on it. I had a great life that I wanted I wanted to continue to live with my children and my husband and my two beautiful grandbabies. It wasn't time for me. I just felt like it's not my time. This has taught me lessons in life, kind of a new rule book or guidebook on how for me to live the rest of my life. I mean, it's changed us immensely. So yeah, it's been, the journey at times has been, well, a nightmare, but it's given more than the nightmare. It's, like I said, it's given me more of my faith. I'm not sweating the small stuff anymore. I mean, it's pretty difficult to get me mad about anything now. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is just, it just doesn't matter anymore. It's just, like these problems are just minuscule to what I've already accomplished. I've already went over the biggest mountain in the world, and everything else is they're just little speed bumps. You could just jump right over those. Just, my life, I just think about every minute how I'm going to spend my life in a positive, healthy way. And I'm going to live every day to the fullest. I'm never going to take another day for granted. That's what I've learned.
It's pretty powerful stuff there, Laura.
Yeah.
My last question for you guys here, and there's no right or wrong to this. This is always, I always say, like a loaded question, and it's your answer. And again, there's no right or wrong. Given what you guys have both gone through with this thing called pancreatic cancer, how do you define it? What is its definition for you?
That's a hard one, Dino.
That's why we save it for
how do I
last.
define it? Goodness gracious. Here, you go first.
How do I find it? It's sad. I mean, when you get into the groups, and you're talking, you're hearing people with their stories, and it's you think how far we've come with medical, and it's like we still have the kind of treatment of chemo with, and let these people go through that. We can't figure out a better way. I mean, to watch and to just to be the person on the sidelines was terrible. To see how what she went through, and then at times I would be in the chemo treatment facility, and I'm watching other people have reactions to the chemo, and they're rushing the nurses in to try to help them out, and just so many things, and you just hoped for a better way, right? That we would have a better way now. I don't want to ramble, but it's just it's sad, and it's disheartening at times, but I don't know. There's always a glimmer of hope, obviously.
And I'm going to take that word of hope. So to define pancreatic cancer, I mean, yeah, it's been a nightmare. It's definitely the hardest thing that I've ever done, we've ever done. My kids, the family, definitely the hardest thing we've ever done. But I guess what I can take from it is never give up. Oh, just keep fighting. And when the doctors at first told me, Lora, there's no hope, I'll be darned, you say, yes, there is, because they are only doctors. They're just men and women that probably have a few more years of college than you have. They're just people. They are not the ones to determine this. And just even on your lowest days, try to get up, move around, and think of something positive. Because, well, it's all I had to get me through the day. And I'm just very fortunate enough to still have more days to have.
So powerful.
With everything that it was and how horrible it has been, I think I'm a stronger, more well-rounded individual now. I took it as a learning lesson of life, and I wouldn't be the same person I am now if I didn't have this experience. So that's about all I have. Just keep on fighting. Just don't give up.
Powerful words.
That's
Lora,
my tidbit.
No, I think, you've walked the walk, and you can speak that way because you've earned the right to do that. And I think what you guys have both said is super powerful. And, from that caregiver perspective, I as you said that, I'm like, man, yeah, that's right, man. It kind of took me back almost 15 years, and, Laura, like you've earned the right to say those things, but you are living proof, right? Like this is why I decided to have this podcast, because as I said before we hit record, I truly am blessed. I'm not sugarcoating or making stuff up, that I get this opportunity to meet so many people touched by this disease that are so positive that we can. I wouldn't be able to articulate your story to someone if I meet them an hour from now in the restaurant down the street, right? But here we have this medium. I mean, I could probably articulate it to someone, but like, you spoke it, and just how powerful and impactful those words are. Like, this just resonates. And you know what? If one person listens to this episode and finds strength and comfort in that, then we've won, right? And I've always said that. And all, if we didn't have, we have over 100,000 downloads, whatever. Like, I could toot my horn till Sunday, but like, all it takes is one person. One person hears your story, and that's why we do it. So it's truly been an honor to have you guys here on the podcast to share the journey that you guys have both been on. And you guys are a miracle, blessing, and just, it's just so powerful to hear that. So thank you for giving us the opportunity here, Project Purple, to share the journey. Last thing here, if someone listening or watching wants to connect, and whether that's on social or email, where's the best place to do that? Or
if anyone wants to hear more, they can get a hold of me at Lora, Lora, the letter J, 0329 at Gmail.
Lora and Chris, thank you for giving us the opportunity here at Project Purple to share your journey, and thank you for being who you guys both are.
Thanks, Dino.
Thank you. Dino, real quick, I would like to share my email address.
Yeah, go ahead,
it's just Chris Jenkins. Yeah, it's Chris Jenkins 0329 at gmail.com. And if anybody has anything,
I'll have to ask after. I'll have to ask after. And Chris, thank you for sharing that. What 0329 has in common for you guys. We'll do that off the air.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to another episode. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you like what you hear today, feel free to share this episode. Make sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast. Till next time, please be safe, and thanks for listening.